My sister-in-law stole my heirloom earrings, sold them, then attacked me, and my family took her side. Blood dripped down my face as my brother's wife smashed the glass against my forehead. The worst part? My family watched in silence, already choosing sides, and it wasn't mine. That's when I knew. I'd been the outsider all along. I've always been the practical one in the family. The responsible daughter who makes sensible choices while my brother Eric coasts through life on charm and family favoritism. Our parents think the sun rises and sets on him, and he's never had to work for anything. That's probably why he can't see through Vanessa. From the moment Eric brought her home, something about Vanessa set my teeth on edge. The way her eyes assessed everything in our family home like she was taking inventory. How she'd casually mention the brands she loved while looking pointedly at my mother's jewelry. The calculated giggles whenever my father told his tired old jokes. She's just trying to fit in, Eric insisted whenever I brought up my concerns. You're being paranoid, Rachel. Maybe I was paranoid. But paranoia sometimes keeps you safe. That's why I installed the small security camera in my bedroom 6 months ago. Nothing obvious. Just a tiny lens disguised as part of my bookshelf decor. I wasn't taking chances after noticing small things out of place whenever the family gathered. When I opened my jewelry box last Tuesday and found my great-grandmother's earrings missing, my heart sank. Those earrings weren't just expensive, they were irreplaceable. Rose gold with small diamonds encircling sapphires, the color of midnight. My great-grandmother had worn them on her wedding day, and they were supposed to be passed down to the next generation. They have to be here somewhere, I muttered, tearing apart my room. I checked under the bed, behind the dresser, emptied every drawer. Nothing. That cold certainty I'd felt about Vanessa from day one solidified into something hard and sharp in my chest. I sat at my computer and pulled up the security footage. There she was, Vanessa slipping into my room during last Sunday's family dinner, while I was downstairs helping Mom with dessert. Her movements were practiced, efficient. She went straight to my jewelry box, rifled through it with purpose, and when she found the earrings, her face lit up with triumph. She pocketed them and was gone in under 2 minutes. My hands shook as I replayed the footage. The audacity, the betrayal, not just of me, but of Eric, of our whole family. She'd walked among us for years, accepting our hospitality while calculating what she could take. I didn't confront her immediately. Some things deserve an audience. Tonight's family dinner provided the perfect stage. Vanessa held court as usual, describing the lavish wedding anniversary party she was planning for her and Eric. "We're thinking of renting out the Bellamy Hotel ballroom," she gushed, while my parents nodded appreciatively. "Nothing but the best." I studied her as she spoke, noting the new designer purse, the gleaming bracelet I'd never seen before. How much of our family had she stolen from to fund her pretensions? I picked up my phone and set it on the table, the video queued up and ready to play. "Vanessa, there's something I need to discuss," I said, my voice steady despite the rage coursing through me. All eyes turned to me. No one at that dinner table knew what was coming, but they were about to find out. I locked eyes with Vanessa across the table, the room suddenly thick with tension. "I have a simple question. Where are my great-grandmother's earrings?" Vanessa froze for just a fraction of a second before her familiar mask of confidence slid back into place. She laughed, a brittle, hollow sound. "What earrings? I have no idea what you're talking about." Without breaking eye contact, I pressed play on my phone and turned the screen toward the table. The footage was crystal clear. Vanessa slipping into my room, rifling through my jewelry box, pocketing my heirloom earrings. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face hardened into stone. Eric stared at the screen, his expression shifting from disbelief to confusion. It was Eric who spoke first, his voice strained. "Vanessa must have had a good reason, right, babe?" I let out a cold laugh. "Oh? And what would that good reason be?" Vanessa straightened in her chair, lifting her chin defiantly. "I pawned the earrings to help pay for our anniversary party, and honestly, it was worth it." My blood boiled. "Are you serious? Those were my great-grandmother's. Do you have any idea what they mean to this family?" She flipped her hair over her shoulder, shrugging with casual disregard. "Your great-grandmother is dead. Why not use them for something that actually matters?" I slammed my phone down on the table, making the silverware jump. "You're a thief," I said, my voice shaking with rage. Mom, Dad, call the police. I'm pressing charges. Vanessa shot up from her chair, her face flushed crimson. You are not doing that. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Vanessa lunged across the table, her open palm connecting with my cheek in a stinging slap. Before anyone could react, she grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked hard. I barely had time to register the pain before she snatched a crystal water glass from the table and smashed it against my forehead. Hot liquid ran down my face, blood, not water. The room spun slightly, but I remained standing, staring at her with undisguised hatred as my mother screamed and my father jumped to his feet. Margaret, call 911, my father shouted, and my mother rushed to the living room phone, hands trembling. Eric stood frozen, caught between his wife and his family, useless as always. The police arrived within minutes, their presence filling our dining room with a surreal blue glow. I pointed at Vanessa, feeling blood trickling down my temple. She stole from me, and then she assaulted me when I confronted her. Vanessa tried to talk over me, her voice shrill with panic. She's lying. She's always been jealous of me and Eric. The officer held up his hand, silencing her. After viewing the footage on my phone, both the theft and the dining room security camera that had captured the assault, there was nothing left for Vanessa to say. They handcuffed her right there in our dining room, reciting her rights as they led her past the half-eaten meal, past family photos where she'd once stood smiling, past Eric who watched with stunned silence. As the front door closed behind them, I exhaled slowly, pressing a kitchen towel to my bleeding forehead. But I felt no relief. This wasn't over. I caught Eric's eye across the chaos of the ruined dinner, and the look he gave me wasn't one of gratitude or remorse. It was hatred, pure and simple. Vanessa might be gone, but I knew with absolute certainty my brother was now my enemy. That night, while I was still cleaning blood from my hair, Eric bailed Vanessa out of jail. The betrayal shouldn't have surprised me, but somehow it still did. Just after midnight, angry pounding on my apartment door jolted me awake. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Eric stood there, fist raised to hammer again, his face contorted with rage. I opened the door, the bandage still fresh on my forehead. Eric didn't even glance at my injury. You've blown this whole thing completely out of proportion, he shouted, pushing past me into my apartment. I closed the door, my hands trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and anger. She stole from me, Eric. Then she smashed a glass into my face. I have every right to press charges. Eric paced my living room like a caged animal. You're my sister. You're supposed to help me. Vanessa is my wife. She has the same rights as anyone else in this family. A bitter laugh escaped me. You really believe that? You think marrying you gives her the right to steal my things? It wasn't stealing, she was just borrowing them. For what? To pawn them? That's the definition of stealing. Eric ran his hands through his hair, his wedding ring catching the light, the same ring I'd helped him pick out back when I still believed he might choose someone worthy of him. You've always been jealous of her, he spat, always looking down on her because she didn't go to college or come from money. I don't care about any of that, I said, my voice breaking. I care that she's dishonest, manipulative, and now violent. This isn't over, Eric warned, stomping toward the door. You've made a huge mistake. What I didn't know then was that Eric had already started spinning his counterattack. The moment he left my apartment, he called our parents, our aunts and uncles, our cousins. By morning, a completely different narrative was circulating through the family. Rachel had always been jealous of Vanessa. Rachel had actually given Vanessa the earrings as a gift, then regretted it. Rachel was just seeking attention, playing the victim as usual. 3 days after the incident, my mother called. Her voice held an unfamiliar chill. Rachel, I've been talking with Eric. I know the truth now. My stomach dropped. What truth? You gave those earrings to Vanessa, didn't you? And now you're making a scene because you changed your mind? I sat down hard on my couch, stunned into momentary silence. Mom, that's absolutely not true. You saw the footage. You saw her take them. The camera doesn't show the whole story, she said, her voice taking on that dismissive tone she used when she'd already made up her mind. Eric explained everything. You told Vanessa she could have them. Mom, I would never... Just apologize to Vanessa, she interrupted. Let's put this ugly business behind us. The call ended with me staring at my phone in disbelief. How could they believe Eric's lies over what they'd seen with their own eyes? over the daughter who had never given them reason to doubt her word? That evening, I received similar calls from my father, my Aunt Linda, even my cousin Stephanie, all of them echoing the same narrative, all of them urging me to drop the charges, all of them choosing to believe a convenient lie over an inconvenient truth. I cried that night, not delicate tears but ugly, heaving sobs that left me hollow. My family, the people who were supposed to know me best, had chosen Eric's version of reality over mine. It wasn't just the injustice of it, it was the profound loneliness of being disbelieved. The next morning I washed my face, applied concealer to the healing gash on my forehead, and called my lawyer. "I'd like to proceed with pressing charges against Vanessa Coleman for theft and assault," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. That afternoon, I sent a group text to my family. "If none of you will stand with me, I'll let the law do it instead. I have filed formal charges against Vanessa for theft and assault." The responses came quickly, expressions of disappointment, accusations of tearing the family apart, pleas to reconsider. I turned off my phone and poured myself a glass of wine. What I didn't know then was that Eric wasn't finished. He wouldn't stop at turning my family against me. He would go much, much further in his campaign to protect his thieving, violent wife. And I had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks passed, the hearing date approached, and Eric's desperation grew. If Vanessa was convicted, his carefully constructed image would crumble alongside hers. I knew my brother well enough to expect a fight, but even I underestimated how far he would go. My cousin Tara called me first. Her voice was hushed, uncomfortable. "Rachel, I need to tell you something. Eric reached out to me. He offered me $5,000 to testify that you told me you had given Vanessa the earrings as a gift." My stomach twisted. "What did you say?" "I told him to go to hell. But Rachel, he's contacting everyone in the family. Someone's going to take the money." She was right. Within days, I heard from 2 more relatives who'd received similar offers, but others went silent, and I knew Eric had found his willing pawns. Then the text messages appeared. Screenshots Eric was circulating that supposedly showed me telling Vanessa she could borrow anything she wanted. The timestamps were from months ago. The problem? I'd never sent those messages. They were clumsy forgeries, but convincing enough for those who wanted to believe them. My parents called daily, their voices increasingly strained. "Just drop the charges, Rachel, for the family's sake, for your brother's sake." "He's trying to frame me," I said, "and you're still taking his side." "We're not taking sides," my father insisted, though we both knew that was a lie. By the time the hearing date arrived, I'd been uninvited from 3 family gatherings: my mother's birthday dinner, my cousin's wedding, the annual family reunion. The message was clear. I was the problem, not the victim. The courtroom was small, with harsh fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. I sat beside my attorney, Angela, a razor-sharp woman who specialized in cases involving domestic disputes. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded, my eyes fixed on Eric and Vanessa across the aisle, holding hands, playing the devoted couple. The proceedings began predictably. Eric's witnesses, our third cousin Daniel, and my father's golf buddy, testified that I had a history of jealousy toward Vanessa and had definitely mentioned giving her the earrings. Then came the doctored text messages, introduced by Eric's attorney with triumphant flourish. I felt sick watching the judge examine them, but Angela squeezed my arm reassuringly. "Your Honor," she said when it was our turn, "we'd like to present the original security footage again, this time with enhanced audio." Eric shifted uncomfortably as the video played, not just showing Vanessa stealing the earrings, but now with clear audio of her muttering, "She'll never even notice they're gone." But the real bombshell came next. Angela called a surprise witness, Daniel's wife, Melissa. "Mr. Coleman approached my husband with an offer of $7,000 to testify falsely today," Melissa stated, her voice trembling but determined. "I have the recording of their conversation on my phone." The courtroom erupted as the recording played. Eric's voice clearly offering money in exchange for just saying what needs to be said. The final nail in the coffin was the digital forensics expert who testified that the text messages had been created using a fake text generator app, not extracted from an actual phone. Eric's face had turned the color of spoiled milk. Vanessa gripped his arm so tightly her knuckles were white. "Your Honor," the prosecutor stood, "in light of this evidence, We are requesting Mr. Coleman be held in contempt of court for witness tampering and falsifying evidence. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Bailiff, take Mr. Coleman into custody. Everything happened so quickly after that. Eric stunned into silence as he was handcuffed, Vanessa's shrill voice fading as Eric was led away. The judge finding Vanessa guilty of theft and assault, ordering her to pay restitution for the pawned earrings. My parents sat frozen in the gallery, the truth they'd refused to see now impossible to deny. My mother tried to catch my eye, her face crumpled with shame, but I looked away. When the verdict was read, I felt no satisfaction, no vindication, only a bone-deep exhaustion. I'd won, but the cost was my family. The people who should have believed me from the start. The brother who had chosen a thief over his sister. I rose silently and walked out of the courtroom, not looking back at the ruins of what had once been my family. Some victories feel exactly like defeat. 3 weeks after the trial, I was finally starting to sleep through the night again. The nightmares, of Vanessa's face contorted with rage, of my family turning their backs on me, were becoming less frequent. I'd thrown myself into work, declined invitations from well-meaning friends, and tried to stitch together a new version of normal. Then my mother called. Eric was released on bail, she said, her voice thin and unfamiliar. The DA is still considering additional charges for the witness tampering, but for now, she trailed off. We both knew the "for now" wasn't promising. How are you holding up? I asked, surprising myself with the question. After everything, I still cared. Not well, she admitted. Your father barely speaks to Eric anymore. We've been reevaluating many things. It was the closest she'd come to an apology. Later that night, scrolling mindlessly through social media, I noticed that Eric and Vanessa had gone silent online. No more photos of expensive restaurants, no more status updates about their perfect life. Their carefully curated image had crumbled overnight. According to my cousin Tara, Eric had lost his job at the investment firm. Turns out, financial institutions don't appreciate employees who commit perjury and tamper with evidence. My phone buzzed at 2:13 a.m. An unknown number, but the message left no doubt who it was from. Rachel, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I just need a little money to get back on my feet. Please, just this once. I stared at Vanessa's message, a cold fury rising in my chest. After everything she'd done, stealing from me, attacking me, standing by while Eric tried to destroy my reputation, she had the audacity to ask for money? I deleted the message without responding and blocked the number. 2 days later, Tara called with an update on the family gossip. It's bad, Rachel. Eric and Vanessa are completely broke. They had to move out of their fancy apartment. They're living in some crappy one-bedroom now. Nobody will hire Eric with this legal mess hanging over him. What about Vanessa? I asked, hating that I still wanted to know. Worse, all her so-called friends have disappeared. You know, the ones who loved going on shopping sprees with her when she was flashing money around, they've ghosted her completely. And apparently, she and Eric fight constantly now. My neighbor lives in the same building as them, says she hears screaming matches almost every night. I should have felt vindicated. This was karma in its purest form, but the hollowness in my chest only deepened. I heard she's even talking about divorce, Tara continued, but she's got nowhere to go. Her parents won't take her back. They're mortified by the whole scandal. I hung up feeling strangely empty. Their downfall brought me no joy, only a lingering sadness for what our family had become. The final blow came a month later. My father called, his voice shaking with a rage I'd rarely heard. Did you know about this? He demanded without preamble. Know about what? Vanessa opened a credit card in your mother's name. Ran up almost $20,000 in charges before we caught it. My stomach dropped. She did what? Designer clothes, jewelry, a weekend at some spa. His voice cracked. We trusted her in our home, we defended her, and this is how she repays us. It was the ultimate betrayal, stealing not just from me, but from the very people who had chosen to believe her over their own daughter. My father continued, his voice thick with emotion. We've filed a police report. The credit card company is investigating, but Rachel, I need to say something. I waited, my heart pounding. We were wrong. About everything. We should have believed you from the start." The words I'd waited months to hear landed with surprising weight. Not triumph, but a profound sadness for all that had been lost in the process. That night, I heard that Eric had moved out, leaving Vanessa to face the consequences of her latest theft alone. Their marriage, built on appearances and material things, hadn't survived the loss of both. My brother, who had risked everything to protect his wife, had finally seen her for what she was. Sometimes justice arrives in unexpected ways. Not through courtrooms or verdicts, but through the natural consequences of one's own actions. Vanessa had finally destroyed herself more thoroughly than I ever could have. 6 months after the trial, my lawyer called with news that left me speechless. During the discovery process for Eric's legal proceedings, they'd uncovered something unexpected. A family trust fund that had been hidden from me for years. "Your grandparents left equal shares for both you and Eric," she explained. "But it appears your parents and Eric conspired to keep your portion from you." The betrayal was so deep it felt almost predictable. While I'd worked multiple jobs to put myself through college, while I'd scraped together a down payment for my modest condo, my brother had been living off money that was partially mine. The court ruled decisively in my favor. The inheritance, nearly $250,000 plus interest, was transferred to my account within weeks. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa's greed had inadvertently exposed an even bigger theft. With the settlement money, I bought a small but beautiful apartment in a different neighborhood, far from any family connections. I invested some, donated some to a legal fund for victims of financial abuse, and used a portion to start my own business. For the first time in my life, I felt completely unburdened, financially secure and emotionally free. My parents attempted reconciliation, of course, tearful phone calls, handwritten letters filled with apologies, even a surprise visit that ended with them standing awkwardly at my door as I politely but firmly refused to let them in. "We were wrong," my father said, his eyes pleading. "We should have protected you." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You should have." I closed the door, not with anger but with finality. Then came the Tuesday afternoon when everything felt different. I was arranging fresh flowers in my new apartment, sunshine streaming through windows that faced east instead of west, when my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen displayed a simple "Mom." I stared at it, knowing exactly what the call would entail. They needed me to forgive Eric, to help him rebuild, to be the responsible one who fixed everything, as I'd always been. My finger hovered over the answer button for just a moment. Then, with a strange sense of calm, I pressed decline. The phone fell silent. I expected to feel guilt or at least conflict, but instead I felt only peace. The life I'd spent trying to earn their approval, trying to be the perfect daughter to balance out Eric's chaos, that life was over. I was no longer angry with them. Anger requires energy, and I was no longer willing to spend mine on people who had chosen, time and again, to devalue and dismiss me. Instead, I felt something far more powerful than rage: indifference. I slipped my phone into a drawer and went out onto my small balcony. The spring air carried the scent of new beginnings. Below, people walked their dogs, pushed strollers, lived their lives connected to those who truly loved them. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with possibility. The family I was born into had failed me, but that didn't mean I couldn't create a new one, built on trust, respect, and genuine care. The sun warmed my face as I smiled, truly smiled, for what felt like the first time in years. This was freedom, not the absence of pain, but the presence of choice. My choice. My life. Mine alone.